Imagine that you and your family are the only ones who made it through an unthinkable disaster. This is how we got to this point. My name is Noah. If you're hearing, you should know that you are my relative and that our story has been told for a very long time for very good reasons. What caused that disaster to happen so quickly? The flood wasn't something that happened all of a sudden. It was the result of a long line of terrible events that happened over generations. The revolt in heaven and the fall of humans are linked by a chain of decisions and outcomes that led to this point. How did the beings in the sky fit into this story? The angels went off track from their original job, which was to live in heaven and serve God. You chose to give up on God and get involved in human affairs, which led to both your fall and our future battle and pain. The path to the flood starts millions of years ago, at the beginning of time, when God made the first people. These heavenly beings had magical powers and were thought to be angels. Their purpose in life was to praise and obey God. One of those angels, Defiance, on the other hand, set off a time of trouble and hardship for the whole world. They were meant to live forever in heaven, but it turned into a spiritual battlefield. Earth, where we live, became the stage for the effects of that fight. Their fall not only changed them, but it also had a huge effect on everyone else. This spiritual war had effects all over the Garden of Eden, including on Adam and Eve, who were the first people to live there. Adam and Eve were kicked out of heaven because they disobeyed God by eating the forbidden fruit. This started a circle of pain and hard work that would continue for all time. The ground is cursed because of you, and you will have to work hard all your life to get food from it. These were the words that sealed the fate of all people. While Cain's family tree went down a path of evil and deviance, my family tree tried to find forgiveness. Eve gave birth to Seth, who brought about a new hope of piety and a sense of relationship with God. This family, which is known for living a long time and being wise, tried to keep the knowledge and love of God alive, even though things were getting harder. My great-grandfather Enoch had a strong faith, and his life showed how powerful God was. He told people that God was going to judge them soon, and that word would be heard for hundreds of years. The name of his son, Methuselah, which meant foretold the flood, was a sign that the end was near. As the clans and groups grew and explored new places, there was more and more sin and corruption. People were going in a bad direction, and God's help was looking more and more likely. This is the story of how humanity almost died out, and how my family was picked to start over because we had faith and obeyed. As promised, the next part will talk about the days before the flood and how we got ready for it. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy this epic trip with Noah and want to learn more about the secrets of faith and people. That way, you won't miss any of these amazing stories. Also, if you want to help with this job, please leave us super thanks. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your donation. Thank you so much for your help. As the story of this amazing event is told again, as families grew into groups and societies formed, each person took on different responsibilities, such as becoming a skilled craftsman or a teacher. The spread of different skills and jobs marked the start of a new society. In this world, social complexity and teamwork shaped everyday life. In this day and age, 10 generations after Adam, things are always hard, and the curse of the hardened land still affects us. It's getting harder and harder to work the land and support our families, a living reminder of the load our ancestors left us with. Lamech, my father, lived 182 years and named me Noah because he thought I would help our tired people who were being hurt by the curse of the ground. When I was born, there was hope for me. Hope for healing in a world that was becoming more and more cruel and unfriendly. But the Nephilim, beings of great strength and size, ruled the world stage. They were not only physical giants, but also figures that changed the course of human history in deep ways. People both admired and feared them, and some even saw them as gods, which took attention away from worshipping the real God who made us. These Nephilim, who were born from the illegal union of fallen angels and human women, not only added something new to the world, but they also made issues worse. Their existence caused confusion and made the rot that spread to every level of society worse. This bad impact caused the amount of evil on earth to grow very quickly. Later, the texts said that when the sons of God saw how beautiful the daughters of humans were, they married any of them. This made people's hearts even more evil. The abnormal union of celestial beings and human women gave birth to a generation of giants. These beings were strong and famous, but they were violent and rebelled against God's plans. This was the world I lived in, not me. A world where violence and moral decay were so common that people's hearts were always thinking bad things. In this setting of decline, God's heart was greatly saddened by the decline of his creation. Violence and injustice had gotten so bad that God, who was very sad, thought about taking drastic action. He thought about destroying the people he had made to clean things up and start over. In this situation, he came out, didn't he? Like a lighthouse of justice. Even though there was corruption all around me, I decided to follow the right way and obey God's commands. Unlike many other people my age, my life was a testament to honesty and loyalty. With this unwavering faith in God's kindness, I was given a divine mission to build an ark, to protect my family and the last few people living on earth from an impending punishment. This job was both a way to save lives and a sign of new hope for a world that was about to fall apart. God told people about a plan that would end a world filled with sin during a time when crime and injustice were common. He told me, "I'm going to kill all living things because men have made the world an awful place to live. I'm going to kill them and the earth too." This holy message warned of a harsh punishment, but it also hinted at a surprising act of kindness for those who were still looking for justice. Even though there were dark clouds over everyone, I got a word of hope. God decided to keep a remnant through my family, which is a sign of how much love he has. This gift of kindness, which wasn't earned, was the light in a world that was getting darker. Where there was a lot of sin, there was a lot more kindness. It was in this setting that I heard God's voice telling me to build an ark as a shelter for when the storm comes. The job was huge, and God had a very clear plan for how to do it. The directions I got were to make an ark out of gopher wood. This meant that I had to take on the project myself and not give it to anyone else. This ark was supposed to have spaces for all kinds of living things, and every part of its building was carefully planned to make sure it would work well and last a long time. The ark was 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. It wasn't a normal ship. It was a raft made to float without moving. It was built to last, with a covering of pitch on the inside and outside to make sure it would resist the coming rain. Not only was this design meant to last through the storm, but it was also meant to be a lasting reminder of God's justice and then kindness. The directions went on to say that they should include a window for light and airflow and a side door to make sure that their valuable goods were safe. Every part of the ark, from the 3 floors to the room below them, was planned to make the best use of space and make sure everyone would survive. During the building process, it became clear how big of a job he was taking on. Every hit with the hammer, every board put in place, and every second spent on the job. Putting together the ark was a way to protect a new creation. The huge amount of work we had to do kept showing us how powerful God was and how serious the situation was. It became more real that the flood was coming as the ark started to take shape. God was going to clean the earth by sending heavy rains. He promised a flood that would be so bad that everything with life in it would die. Even though it was scary, this ruling had to happen to clean up the world of crime. God told him what he saw would happen after the flood while he worked. He said, "I will establish my covenant with you." Even though there was damage, there was a plan for life to continue on earth. People and all the other living things God made would know that God is committed to them forever through this bond. Putting together the ark turned into more than just a building job. It was a mission from God, an act of loyalty that showed my faith and my will to do what God wants me to do. As I turned each joint and lined up each plank, I was sure I was part of a bigger plan that would affect the future of everyone in the world. As the ark was being built, I also talked about fairness and the need to turn away from sin. I knew I had to get back to justice right away, after every hammer blow and nail driven into the wood. Even though the ark was a clear warning and an obvious sign of safety, many people chose to ignore it and go on with their lives as if nothing were dangerous. People lost faith, even though the ark was a work of technical genius and a sign of faith. It was also used to make fun of people. People ignored the fact that God was about to punish them by enjoying feasts, parties, and personal joys. The party went on, but the threat of destruction got closer and closer. The day finally came. As God had told me, I went into the ark, and the sky opened up, letting out a flood of rain that had never been seen before. The water quickly rose and ate up the ground, the houses, and all the living things that had ignored the warning from God. I spent 120 years of my life trying to warn people, but most of them didn't listen. Even though I preached, the word of repentance didn't seem to get through. Many hearts stayed closed, refusing to see the truth until it was too late, even though bad things were about to happen. That was his life. There was still hope of salvation in this world, but it was often overwhelmed by doubt and cynicism. Not only was building the ark hard on the body, it was also a test of faith and determination. Every day was a fight against the doubt and ridicule of those around me, but my belief would not waver. I knew that my mission came from God, and that my commitment had a bigger meaning than I could fully understand at the time. Everything about the ark, from its huge structure to the air system we came up with, was carefully thought out to make sure that its valuable cargo would survive. The ark was as big as a big building and was a masterpiece of pre-flood engineering. It was meant to float on the seas of the final judgment and protect life inside, while God's anger destroyed everything else. As the rains came down and the land flooded, the ark saved my family and the animals that God had sent in pairs. The provision of food and the collection of species were both carefully planned by God, showing once again how careful and precise his plan is to protect life. Life as we knew it stopped when my family, the animals, and I went into the ark to stay safe. The outside world was a mess. The floods covered everything. It gave me a chance to think deeply about God's devastating and healing power at the same time. As I was locked up and thought about the damage going on outside, I realized how important what had been given to me was. As the water level dropped, I felt the weight of the duty to rebuild and start a new order. This was a fresh start that God had promised. It would have its problems, but it also held the promise of a new agreement between God and people. There was a lot of stress inside the ark in the 7 days before it rained. Even though people had been getting ready for this moment for more than 100 years, the final wait was a real test of faith. Every day that went by without the promised flood showing up, my worry grew, but God's promise kept me strong. It rained non-stop. The windows of heaven finally opened, and the springs of the great abyss gushed forth. The waters rushed down with crushing force, and the world we knew began to disappear beneath the rising waters. During these 40 days and nights, there was both damage and purification and rebirth. It got us ready for a fresh start. The ark sank into the water that covered the earth, but my family and I were safe inside our boat. It was God's rescue in the middle of the chaos. We all saw the damage from the outside, but we held on to hope because we knew it was our job to rebuild the world after the flood. At that moment, every animal on board, from the tiniest to the biggest, stood for life on earth going on. The variety of animals that lived in our temporary home kept showing us how complicated and beautiful God's world is. Everyone and everything in the world had a special job to do in the world that God planned to fix. As God had told us, we took care of those animals during the last few days of rain and storm and made sure they had all their needs met. After 150 days of floods, the water finally started to go down. It happened slowly, but every sign that the water was going down gave us hope. We were not forgotten by God. I was actively shaping our future and leading us through this hard time into a new age of peace and wealth. We were both relieved and amazed when the ark finally stopped on Mount Ararat. Mount Ararat, which stood tall and proud above the fields around it, was now a sign of our rescue and the place where the world would begin to be rebuilt. Even though the ground around them was still damaged, it was now a clean slate, ready to be formed by God's will. As the water level dropped in the days after the storm, we started to look around our new area. The air was clean, and even though the land was wet, it looked like it was about to grow again. Every step we took up Mount Ararat reminded us that it was not enough for us to just stay alive. We had to grow and follow God's rules. Then God looked at us and reminded us that He is always with us and cares for us. He blew a wind over the land, which made the water go away even faster. That act of God was a strong warning that we are not alone, even when things are very bad. We had God with us the whole time. He helped us through every problem and got us ready to lead the world's rebirth. Now that we were getting ready to leave the ark and walk on solid ground, we knew we had a huge job to do. It would be hard to rebuild the world, but we were ready to face it with hope and drive. There were signs of a new beginning, with each animal leaving the ark and each plant starting to grow again. It was a chance to live in peace with God's creation and with each other. The ark rested on Mount Ararat after the flood, which was a great place from a military point of view to start over. As the water went down, new life started to appear with more energy. Once hidden, the mountaintops slowly came into view, showing a world that was both destroyed and full of new possibilities. When I opened the window I had worked so hard on, I felt a mix of excitement and hope. Taking a deep breath of fresh air, he sent a raven outside to see how big the changes were. The raven, a tough and flexible bird, took advantage of the debris left over from the flood and flew away. It didn't come back, so we didn't know what was going on in the world. To get more information, he sent a dove, whose return was more likely to happen. He went back, but couldn't find a place to rest because the water kept covering the earth. We didn't give up hope, even though the pain of waiting was almost unbearable. She sent it again after a week. It came back this time with a new olive leaf in its beak, which meant that life had begun again and the water was going down. After 7 more days, he sent her out a third time, but she still didn't come back. It was clear from this that it was safe to leave the ark. It was dry enough on earth for life to start up again. The flood caused a lot of damage, but it also brought new life. Now was our chance to fix up the earth and start living on it again. Getting out of the ark was a very important event. God had already told us when to go in, and now He was showing us how to get out. He took care of our family and the animals so that they could not only survive the flood, but also help the new earth grow and change. My family and I left the ark with respect and thanks. We were joined by many other animals who would start new lives. Before the land had been changed and was ready to be lived on and farmed. It was a fresh start, a second chance that God gave, because the hope of a new life made me want to build an altar to the Lord at the top of Ararat. As a sign of thanks and dedication for the new world that God had let us enter, I carefully chose clean animals and burned them as offerings. As the altar's flames rose to the sky, they showed how dedicated we were and how ready we were to do our job as guards of God's creation, no matter what. As the offerings were being burned, a pleasant smell filled the sky, and God, touched by our loyalty, promised not to curse the earth again because of people or kill all living things like He had before. It will rain and snow, be cold and hot, summer and winter, day and night, as long as the earth exists. This promise was tied to our connection with the divine and served as a warning that God's mercy would always be there, even though people tend to do bad things. They made a deal that not only guaranteed their presence, but also set up a circle of life and rebirth that would last through the seasons, years, and generations. We started to rebuild in this new world, marked by the rainbow. We planted the seeds of a new society that would care for the earth and get along with all living things. The dry earth turned into a rich field that could be carefully and respectfully farmed. It was a place where all living things, plants, animals, and people, could thrive under God's watchful eye. The gift I made to God while the ark rested on Mount Ararat shows both thanks and a renewed dedication to the life that had given us a fresh start. When the sacrifices were being burned, the smell filled the air and made God very happy. He promised not to destroy life on earth with another flood of this size, because he was happy that we had obeyed and respected him. This promise from God was both a sign of kindness and an admission that even though people are naturally bad from a young age, God would rather keep things together than destroy them all. He told them again to grow, multiply, and fill the earth, just like he told Adam at the start of time. God also set up new rules for how people should live with nature. All the animals on earth and all the birds in the sky will be afraid of you. He told them, everything that moves on earth and all the fish in the sea are given into your hands. That reminded us of our duty and power over the animals. But there was one important catch. We couldn't eat the meat with the blood in it, because the blood is the meat's life. This order made it clearer that life is sacred and that blood, which represents life itself, must be respected. A beautiful sign that will always be there, the rainbow, sealed this new agreement between God and people. God put the rainbow in the sky after the flood to always remind us of his word. When I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow shows up in the sky, I will remember the promise I made to you and all other living things. And God said, this rainbow wasn't just a natural event, it was also a sign from God of loyalty and kindness. God told us to leave the ark when the world was finally dry and ready for people to live again. You, your wife, your kids, and their wives should leave the ark. Bring all the live things you have with you so they can have babies and fill the earth. The escape from the curve not only freed us from our prison, but it also started a new era for people and all living things on earth. Every step we took after leaving the ark had meaning. Before, there was a new world that was ready to be built on the lessons of the past. We started this new chapter with a ceremony that was meant to be symbolic. We built an altar to God and offered burnt sacrifices on it. We were thankful for the second chance that was given to us, and each animal that was killed as a sacrifice showed that. As the altar fires burned the offerings, a sweet smell rose to the heavens as a tribute to them. This made the Lord happy. That sacrifice made us even more determined to follow God's rules and honor the life he had protected. The altar fire, which burned away the remains of the old world and lit the way to the new, was a sign of cleansing and rebirth. So, with the promise of the rainbow, we started to fix up, rebuild, and fill the earth again. Every family and animal that got off the ark was part of a bigger plan. They were all connected in a deep web of life that God blessed. We are determined not to make the same mistakes again and to live in peace with each other and all living things while God watches over us and cares for us. That fresh start gave people a chance to not only survive, but also to grow, to change the course of history for the better, and to fully live out the promise they made with God. It was a time of great hope, proof of how powerful faith and persistence can be, and of God's unending kindness that leads us. We saw the first rainbow appear in the sky. Each color showed a promise of peace and security. That rainbow wasn't just a link between the storms of the past and the ones that were to come. It was also a constant reminder that God is with us, even when things are hard, and guides and supports us every step of the way. As each animal got out of the ark, a new story full of potential began. We are ready to take on the duty of taking care of this new world, to feed and protect it while keeping the holy promise we made with our Creator. The rainbow in the sky was a visible promise of this covenant, which was a promise between God and all living things on earth that destruction would never happen again in its entirety. So with hope in our hearts and an eye on the future, we promised to live in peace and justice, having many children and filling the earth with acts of kindness and care for the creation that had been given to us. In this world, each new dawn brought the promise of a fresh start under the sign of the rainbow. It was a sign of how powerful God's love and faithfulness are at healing. As we looked out at the new earth, which was full of hopes and possibilities, I, or someone else who was the last man from the Stone Age and a witness to the world before the flood, thought about how God had returned order. Even though I made an offering and gave it to God with joy, the problems stayed. They would affect my children and all future generations. Because of a mistake his father, Cam, made, Minieto Canaan was cursed in that new world. This shows how complicated human relationships are and how important our actions are. The effects of what we do reach far and wide, affecting people besides ourselves. Even with all of those problems, God's promise that he would never drown and kill all living things again gave people hope. He told us that his promise to be with us was as strong as the sky and would last forever. By making this promise, he reminded us of the task he gave Adam at the beginning of time, to multiply and fill the earth. With the passing of time, Min and the younger, Cam and his children and grandchildren, and Sem and Japheth all went wrong. People who were still flawed continued to fight their evil urges, but God's presence never changed. Building the Tower of Babel was a turning point that showed how creative people are and how much we want to reach the skies. But their efforts to go beyond the limits God set only made him stronger in his control. He messed up our languages and spread people all over the world with one easy action. A clear sign that nothing people could do could change his special plans. When I came to the end of my life on earth and thought back on the things I had learned, I could see that my faith had been the key to everything. And it was faith that got me through the flood, helped me build the ark, and led my family through the rough water to a new start. There were many ways in which I was like the men who came before me, like my grandfather Seth, who prayed to the Lord in the past. When I looked up at the sky and saw the rainbow, I always thought of how faithful God was and how he kept his word. Each color showed how merciful he is and how committed he is to us, both as beings and as active parts of his creation. This sign in the sky wasn't just for me. It was a warning for all time that God's kindness still exists, even though some people aren't what they seem to be. It was an instruction to follow the right path, honor others, and keep a holy, worshipful connection with God. When my time on earth was over, I knew that the story of humanity would go on, with each new generation facing its own problems and successes. And through it all, the rainbow would always be a sign of hope. A promise that there would always be a fresh start, even when bad things happened. We hope that this trip through Noah's story has encouraged and strengthened your faith. If this video makes you feel something special, please share it with your friends and family to spread the message of hope and renewal. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on alerts to get more videos like this. Thank you for following us to the end of this incredible story. See you in the next video. May God be with you always. Amen.